She leaned close and whispered, "My age isn't a problem, right?" And that one question changed everything I thought I knew about that night. My name is Andre. I am 34 years old, I work in hotel management, and I am not the kind of man who goes to parties like that one. I prefer quiet evenings, a book, maybe a slow walk after dinner. But my colleague had insisted. He said it was a networking event at one of the most prestigious venues in the city, right on the waterfront, and that showing up would be good for my career. He said it the way people say things when they have already decided for you. So I went. I remember standing in front of my closet for too long that evening. I chose the dark grey suit. It was the only one I owned that felt appropriate for a room full of people who belonged there. I adjusted my collar in the mirror, looked at myself for a moment longer than necessary, and left. The venue was everything I had imagined and nothing I was comfortable with. Crystal chandeliers hung above a room full of soft conversation and expensive perfume. The waterfront stretched out behind the open glass walls, the city lights reflecting on the dark water in long broken lines. People moved slowly, confidently, the way people move when they are used to being in beautiful rooms. I took a glass of water from a passing tray and found a spot near the edge of the terrace where I could breathe. That is where I first saw her. She was standing a few feet away, also near the railing, also slightly apart from the crowd. She wore a deep green dress, long and simple, with her dark hair falling loose over her shoulders. She was holding a glass of champagne lightly, not drinking it, just holding it the way you hold something when you need your hands to have a purpose. She was looking out at the water. I did not approach her. I am not that kind of person either. But somehow, without either of us making a deliberate decision, we ended up standing closer as the terrace filled with more guests. She glanced over. I nodded. She smiled, just slightly, and looked back at the water. Then she said, still looking forward, that the lights on the water were the only honest thing about a night like this. I did not expect that. I laughed, quietly. I said I had been thinking something similar. Her name was Elena. She told me that easily, without any of the performance that introductions sometimes carry at events like that one. Just Elena. She asked what I did, and I told her. She said she had worked in the same building as the hotel I managed, years ago, in a different life. She said it with a lightness that made me think she meant it exactly as she said it. A different life. We talked. Slowly at first, the way two people talk when they are both a little guarded but also a little curious. She was easy to talk to, not because she said everything perfectly, but because she listened in a way that felt genuine. She asked questions that were not just polite. She pushed back gently when I said something she disagreed with. She laughed at the right moments and went quiet at others. At some point my colleague appeared, raised an eyebrow at me with a small smile, and disappeared again. I barely noticed. The party moved indoors as the evening cooled. Elena and I moved with it, without discussing it, as if we had both quietly agreed to keep talking. We found a quieter corner near the far end of the room, where the music was softer and the crowd thinner. A server brought small plates of food. We ate and talked, and the hours moved the way hours sometimes do when you are not watching them. And then, at some point during a small pause in the conversation, she turned toward me and leaned in slightly. Her voice dropped just enough that it was only for me. And she said, quietly but clearly, "My age isn't a problem, right?" I looked at her. I did not understand immediately what she meant. She was watching me with something careful in her eyes, something that was not quite nervousness but was close to it. The kind of look someone gives you when they have been carrying a question for a while and have finally decided to let it out. I asked her what she meant. She paused. Then she said she was 47. She said it plainly, the way you say something you have learned to stop apologizing for even if the world sometimes makes you feel like you should. She said that earlier in the evening, when she had mentioned knowing the building years ago, she had meant it. She had worked there in her 30s. She had built a career, then stepped away to take care of her mother for several years, and had only recently started showing up to things like this again. She said she sometimes forgot how to read people now, forgot whether things like conversation at a party meant something or nothing, forgot whether her age made her invisible to some people before she even finished a sentence. She was not asking me to reassure her. She was not performing vulnerability. She was simply being honest, the way she had been honest all evening, and she was giving me the choice to be honest back. I was quiet for a moment, not because I was unsure of what to say, but because I wanted to say it correctly. I told her that I was 34, and that the most interesting conversation I had had in months had been in the last 3 hours on a terrace with her. I told her that I had not once thought about her age during that conversation, not because I had not noticed her, but because when someone is genuinely present with you, the number attached to their years stops being the most relevant information in the room. I told her that if anything, the fact that she had lived through enough to step away for someone she loved and then find her way back to a room like this, that said something about her that a room full of polished 30-year-olds could not match. She looked at me for a moment without saying anything. Then she looked down at her glass. When she looked back up, there was something softer in her expression, not relief exactly, but something close to it. She said thank you. Not in the way people say it to end a moment, but in the way people say it when they mean it completely. We stayed until the party thinned. We walked out together through the glass doors and stood on the same terrace where the evening had started. The city was quieter now, the water still, the lights on its surface steadier than before. She wrapped her hands around her clutch against the cooler air. I asked if I could call her sometime. Not with any particular agenda. Just to continue what we had started. She smiled, a real smile, the kind that reaches the eyes without effort, and she said yes. We exchanged numbers the old-fashioned way. She read hers to me slowly while I typed it in. Before she turned to leave, she paused and said that she had almost not come tonight. That she had stood in her apartment for 10 minutes with her coat on, almost convinced herself it was not worth it, and then gone anyway. I told her I was glad she had gone anyway. She laughed softly. Then she walked toward the waiting car, her green dress catching the last of the terrace light as she went. I stood there a moment longer before heading to my own car. I thought about the evening. About how much of life we almost miss by staying home. About how age is one of those things we have been taught to treat as a filter when really it is just a number that tells you how long someone has been paying attention. About how the most honest thing someone had said to me in a long time had been a quiet whisper on a terrace, and how much courage that kind of honesty quietly takes. Elena and I had dinner the following week. And the week after that. The conversations never got smaller. If anything, they grew. She was curious about everything and patient with complexity. She had opinions she had actually earned. She knew how to sit with silence without filling it with noise. Months later, on a quiet evening at home, she told me that the night of the party she had been afraid the question would end the conversation. I told her the question was the reason the conversation never ended. Some people arrive in your life when you are looking at the water and thinking about going home early. Some people say the truest thing they are thinking, even when it is risky, even when the answer is uncertain. And some conversations start on a terrace and quietly become something you did not know you were looking for. If you are standing at the edge of something tonight, wondering whether to stay or go, wondering whether to say the honest thing or keep it safe, wondering whether the world will make room for exactly who you are, stay. Say it. The right person will not flinch.